Hello, everyone. Welcome to the University of the Underground. We are a free, pluralistic, and transnational university that was founded in 2017 in the basement of a nightclub in Amsterdam. I am Naum, the head of program of I Want to Believe, an investigation into religion and belief systems and how they connect with politics, society, economics, and nation states. I would like to welcome our researchers and also to any visiting participants or anyone else watching this video. I'll be very, very grateful if you could go to our website and support with a donation so we can keep running these programs. Today is the beginning of a series of 3 sessions with our special guest, Sarah Sparks, and good friend of mine. And Sarah, I mean, I don't know, Sarah has inspired me since she appeared in my horizon. She's a London-based artist and curator. Her work engages with magical and mythical narratives, vernacular belief systems, the visualization of anomalous phenomena, and liminality through the metaphor of the portal. Her work is often research-led and an exploration into the borderlands where science and magic intersect. She works as an artist with installation, sculpture, painting, beautiful paintings. Check her Instagram, and I love them, performance, and more recently film. And she runs the visual arts and research project Ghost. So Sarah is going to, I mean, she's prepared a very intriguing workshop and really looking forward to this, Sarah. So the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Nam. That was a really lovely introduction. And can I share files, etc. here? Is that all okay if I want to share anything during the talk?
Yeah, you can share your screen and you can drop the links and things to the chat.
Okay, that's fantastic, brilliant. I'll just start with you all being able to see me, and I can see you, and just say hello and welcome. I'm Sarah Sparks, and I've got a thing about ghosts. I've been researching them for a long time. I've been interested in them since I was a child, and particularly through ghost stories and ghost films. And as I became an artist, I also continued with that interest in ghosts. And it's led me into many different areas of research. So I've met so many different people exploring and researching ghosts from different fields. I'm here for 3 sessions with you. So I'm here today and Wednesday and Friday for 3 hours in total. And I'm doing a project called Ghost Making with you. I'm going to take that through 3 parts. There'll be an introduction, and then a bit more of an introduction with then some kind of actions for you to participate in. And then we're going to finish with a haunting in which I'd like all of you to contribute. I'm going to go to a PowerPoint to start off with. So let me just try and do that. I'm one of those people who can't talk and do things with my hands at the same time. So bear with me.
So, okay. Yeah, it's working. Yes, yeah. Perfect.
Okay, let's play it. Shout out if you can't see it. You should be seeing a big portal, a big black hole. I hope everyone can see that. Naum, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it really well.
Fantastic. Yes. You've seen this in real life too.
I've seen it in real life, indeed.
And it's traveled around the world too, this portal. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is episode 1 of Ghost Making, and the title of this evening's session is Ghosts. So host, there's a reason for that capital H, which I'll come to later, and ghosts. Okay, this image is of a black hole that I made for an exhibition called No Such Thing as Gravity. One of the things I'm interested in as an artist is how we might visualize anomalous phenomena, how ghosts and black holes, things that, although the difference being with ghosts is that we've got no material evidence as yet of their existence, and black holes we do, but we haven't actually seen one other than through accounts and speculation and proposals. And I'm very interested in how we visualize these particular phenomena. And that was the starting point for me. How do ghosts look, and why do they look the way that they look? This is a picture from an exhibition, No Such Thing as Gravity, and my contribution to that was called The Ghost Formula. This was in 2016, and it featured lots of different elements of research into ghosts. And I'm going to talk more about this project later, so I shall just move on to the subject of the next 3 sessions. So, ghost making. Sometimes I'm going to put some text on the screen for you, and I'm not necessarily going to read it exactly as it's there. It's there so that you can come back later, and you know, it's very hard to remember everything a person said, and you can come back and have a look at this, and if you want to look at it in more detail. So I'm talking about the idea of the ghost and how it's part of belief systems across cultures and throughout recorded history. So most languages contain a word to describe the ghost, so they have a word for the ghost. And often these words, like the type of ghost that they describe, have traversed borders and been assimilated across cultures. Ghost stories continue to be a credible form of storytelling in these skeptical times, and ghosts have a timeless ability to make us aware of those issues we'd rather like to forget. And over 3 workshops, we will explore the idea of the ghost as a remnant of suppressed memories, an embodiment of hidden desires and lost dreams, a symbol of the changeable and intangible, a device for fear and control, a healing and unifying presence within marginalised cultural groups or genders, the ghost narrative as a political device within rhetoric, writing, film, visual art, or popular culture, and more. So a lot to cover. I hope I can touch on all of those subjects with you. And I just finished this with a quote, which is from Leonard Crowdog. This quote comes from the American Indian movement, so an activist Native American movement in the 1970s, who retook the Wounded Knee, contested territory, wanting to claim this territory back. And he said, standing on the hill where so many people were buried in a common grave, standing there in that cold darkness under the stars, I felt tears running down my face. I can't describe what I felt. I heard the voices of the long dead ghost dancers crying out to us. This is Rosanna Raymond performing at one of the ghost hostings. The ghost hostings are a series of events that I've curated since 2008, and they're ongoing. And I'm going to again talk more about this later. So firstly, a little bit more about me before we come to my project Ghost. So I'm an artist and I'm a curator, and I call myself an artist curator because I see my curating as a creative input of being an artist. And I'm primarily concerned with the immaterial and how it can be visualized through contemporary art. In 2006, I made an artwork called You Are Here. Now this is a coffin that actually is my size, and so one day I can be buried in this coffin. That's the idea. But when you look inside the coffin, it has a little peephole, like a gap in the wood at the foot of the coffin. And when you peep inside it, you see a tunnel of lights going off into infinity. It was a very simple coffin, just a very poor coffin, not an elaborate and fancy one. And only one person could look inside the coffin at a time. So, and look inside this coffin at this illusion. It was all an optical illusion. It was all smoke and mirrors. So it was something called an infinity mirror. So what I was thinking of with this work, which You Are Here, is that it could be seen as a metaphor for our attempt to comprehend what lies beyond the threshold of life. And we can only hypothesize about the nature of our ending. And it's a journey we must make alone. There's no understanding, only speculation as to what might happen to the human personality, our material being beyond mortality. We may surmise that our relationship to death and the dead enables us to know that we are here. Dead but immaterially persisting, a ghost is in part the spectre of the past returning. We must learn to live with this ghost, to know that we are present. And Ghost, here we go, that capital G and that capital H again, is a creative research project initiated in 2008. And it's an evolution of my own attempts to create artworks and organize exhibitions, exploring the living's relationship with that infinite mystery death. And for me, ghosts, with their immaterial, subjective, yet persistent position within human culture, seem like the perfect medium through which to approach this. I see ghosts as this kind of bridge between living and death, whether metaphorically or if you have a belief, then you believe they really are. And they enable us to talk about death and to approach it and our own feelings about death within our own lives personally and more universally. Here's the coffin. And here is an earlier version of me in 2006, more youthful me, looking into my coffin. I can fit into that coffin. And this is what I see at the top of the screen. You can see the little tunnel of lights going off into the distance. So that piece of work is an old piece now, 2006, but it's one of the pieces of work that I've probably shown more than any other. And it's been in exhibitions about death, about afterlife. It's been in exhibitions that have been organized in a church, so by people who have a belief system where they saw this as having a religious element to it. It's been equally shown by people who are skeptical, who believe that this demonstrates that it's all it's all illusion and it's all smoke and mirrors. So it's been shown in many different contexts, and it has a resonance on many different levels. So I've been pleased that that piece of work has continued, and I've had to get that coffin in and out of my studio many times. And had it in the back of a black cab once, much to the horror of the cab driver, who insisted it was covered with a blanket so that people couldn't see it in his cab. It's a powerful thing, the image of the coffin. Okay, and on the right-hand side is my little ghost. And it's the classic ghost, boo, you know, the white sheet, the little ghost, the person buried in a veil or winding sheet. It's the kind of idea we get of the ghost, because people would have been, who could afford it, would have been wrapped up in a sheet. And so if you were going to see a dead person, you know, they might be still under that sheet. And I've made a little puppet here. So I like this idea that we animate the inanimate, that we can imagine in inanimate objects a presence, particularly when someone has died, an object that that person may pass on, that you may inherit, that to you, when you see that object, you touch that object, you may think about that person. And some who believe this may feel that they can contact the spirit of that person through an object. My little ghost is a very simple puppet called a handkerchief puppet. When the crosspiece above the ghost is on the ground, it's just a piece of fabric. You could blow your nose on it or sneeze in it. Or if it was bigger, you could use it as a sheet to sleep under. You attach 3 strings, you hold it in your hand, and boo, it's a ghost. This ghost needs a host. The guest plus the host equals a ghost. And this is an artwork by Marcel Duchamp called A Guest Plus a Host Equals a Ghost. And Duchamp wrote this equation, this ghost formula, inside the wrapper of candies that he gave out to people who were visiting an exhibition that was organized by a friend of his in Paris. Now, I'm going to forget the date now. I think it's 1955. So maybe you can research that and see if I'm right. But at this exhibition, a guest plus a host equals a ghost, written on a candy wrapper, was what people were discovered once they'd eaten the sweet. So they unwrapped the sweet, they ate it, and was left with this ghostly shroud with a ghost formula or a ghost equation written on it. Now, Marcel Duchamp's ghost equation is very clever because he's referring back to the etymological roots of the word ghost, which comes from with the word host within ghost. Host is inside a ghost, and host hospitality. And for hospitality, you need both a guest and a host. So it's an exchange. So the guest and the host have joined together, and in this kind of annihilated each other, or come together in some way, created this extra dimension. So two material things colliding have created an immaterial presence of the ghost. The guest is a host inside the ghost. You need to have the guest, you need to have the host, and then you can have the ghost. So I like the idea the ghost can only exist with us creating it. The Ghost project came out of my interest in ghosts as an artist, and I wanted to see how artists and other researchers were making ghosts. And initially it started as an exhibition in St. John's Church in Bethnal Green, which was a fantastic venue, an old church designed by John Soames. So actually a Enlightenment church, so Enlightenment being a time when people were trying to banish ghosts as unscientific, yet this John Soames building still has a very spooky and appropriate atmosphere. So it seemed like a good venue for a ghost exhibition. And it started as a bit of fun because I love ghost stories, I love ghost films. I hadn't until this point really interrogated why ghosts appear like they do so often as this transparent, floating thing in some cultures, particularly in Western cultures. Then why did they appear in this way? And after having this hosting this first exhibition, I started, along with Ricardo Vidal, who was my co-curator, to interrogate why ghosts are appearing as they appear, why ghosts appear across all cultures, and to then bring together different researchers from many different backgrounds. So the Ghost Project was formed, and it consists, because it's still going today, of ghost hostings and ghost exhibitions. The idea of the Ghost Project is it's a supporting platform or a host, and it enables invited guests to visually and conceptually manifest and interrogate the idea of the ghost. It's got a capital H inside it, so capital G and a capital H, and that's a direct homage to Duchamp. The host is a guest inside the ghost. These are three flyers from some of the first ghost exhibitions. And at the start of it, you can see we were very much going for a very classic kind of gothic ghost aesthetic with some kind of black and white aesthetics and ghosts with veils. But my travels and exploration around ghosts have led me to discover that ghosts exist in many different manifestations. And this is an image from more recent research into ghosts in Taiwan in 2017, when I went to be an artist in residence, collecting and researching the idea of the ghost in Taiwan. And this lady sitting here in her temple is Pepe, and she is a spirit medium. This is both a kind of religious role and also in the sort of notion that many of us will already have as the medium, as someone that contacts and speaks to spirits of the dead. So she would guide visitors, she would talk to spirits of the dead, but she would also talk to gods, the spirits of gods too, and impart information from them as a sort of intermediary between the spirits and the material world. The Ghost Project. So I was saying how the Ghost Project has these two elements to it. Ghost hostings, which look at the socio-cultural relevance of ghosts. And these are interdisciplinary seminars. They've taken place in many different places, universities, art galleries, in some tunnels, a heritage centre in some tunnels deep under Liverpool. They bring together people from all kinds of different practices, barristers, cultural theorists, ghost researchers, paranormal researchers, parapsychologists, and artists. Lots of performance artists. And these ghost research seminars, I see them as art events. They are designed to stimulate and provoke discussion around ghosts. And they've covered all sorts of kind of different fields of research into ghosts. So those run alongside a program of exhibitions, performance events and film screenings, and they inform them. So the research from these seminars has enlightened me as a researcher, and I hope other people who've attended them, but it also then helps with the curation of a series of visual arts exhibitions and performances. And on the screen are some of the places these have taken part. My writing has escaped from its books, so I apologise for that. And just was a list at the bottom of some of the people that have supported the project, which probably hopefully was showing a breadth of the kind of places that was showing that really that the Ghost project is not just a visual research project. It's not just touched the arts. It's also been funded by Arts and Humanity Research Council, who gave us knowledge transfer funding. I love that. It sounds like some kind of psychic thing, knowledge transfer. So they got knowledge transfer funding, and it's been funded by the British Council and also by supported by the Church of St John and Bethnal Green. This is oh no, his name is gone, which is terrible. But this was an amazing performance. So hopefully his name will come back to me. Ghost, one of the very early Ghost hostings, and you can read all about the Ghost hostings on the Ghost website. I'll send you a link. So I'm going to just touch on an example of some Ghost hostings. The image you're seeing here is one of the very first Ghost hostings that took part at Senate House, and we really enjoyed hosting these in some alleged haunted rooms as well, so that added kind of to the interest. But I'm going to move on a little further to Ghost hostings 11 and 14 in my examples. And this series of Ghost hostings demonstrated how ghosts have been used as a force for cultural and political change. And that's something I think that's particularly relevant for this, for I Want to Believe, for the course that you're taking. How ghosts actually can influence and affect things culturally and politically. So this series of ghost hostings invited artists and people from across discipline to explore this. So an example from kind of a typical Ghost hostings 11, Ghost Dance 1, and that name, Ghost Dance, is taken from the Native American religious practice, which happened after the occupation and destruction of Native American culture by the British, by the European invaders, who wiped out a huge amount of the native people, and also completely suppressed their culture. And as a response to this, the Ghost Dance movement grew, and the Ghost Dance movement harked back to earlier circle dance culture of the Native American, in which people would come together in a circle and unite and dance. When in the Ghost Dance movement, this circle formation and movement would allow the ghosts of the dead to come back again. And firstly, it would wipe away all of the invading people, get rid of them, destroy them, and bring back the buffalo and all of the other ghosts that had of people and animals and culture that had been destroyed. So Ghost Dance was very powerful, and it actually was very instrumental in helping Native American culture to continue and to persist, because it gave people a focus for their culture and enabled it to be a healing force as well in some senses. Okay, so Ghost Dance. And Ghost hostings 11. We had David Jacks showing a film. We had Alan Murdy, a barrister, really cool barrister, who was actually instrumental in getting the poll tax revoked in this country, in the UK. So Alan Murdy, he's also the president of the Ghost Club, and he talks about how ghosts have affected the law. Did you know in the UK, if you sell your house and it's haunted and you don't declare it, you could get in trouble legally. You need to declare in the UK if you have a haunted house and when you're selling it. How you prove whether it's haunted or not is another matter and slightly more complex. And then we also had Marcy Sword, who's an artist, and she was talking about spirit conjuring and laying down hoodoo tricks to combat anti-cultural austerity in the Netherlands. And we actually all did a spell with Marcy to try and affect this. And then finally we had Chris Moffat. Sorry, Chris, you've disappeared from off the list. But he was talking about Bhagrat Singh. So he was a historian. Chris is a historian. And he was talking about Bhagrat Singh, who was an activist who died very young. He was executed. He was a rebel against the British colonial in India. And he was, yes, a terrorist, he might be described as, an activist against the imperial presence. And his ghost appears in Sikh culture to this date. So his ghost is in computer games as well, in Sikh computer games. So this is this picture. Let's just have a look at the picture because it's amazing. And this is probably where I met now for the first time. Ghost Hostings 12. Ghost Dance. This was also in the Ghost Dance series. And this is the Savage Club, who are Samoan, largely Samoan performance art collective with Rosanna Raymond, Sister Specific, who you can see in the picture there, Emine, Joe Walsh, and Dr. Mark James Hamilton. And they were part of a night of performances. And they told everyone had to leave the performance theatre. This was at Central St Martin's University of the Arts, who were my partner organisation. And I know you ought to look for an organisation or institution to partner with. And I'm probably quite a good example of someone who's partnered with lots of different organisations and institutions. So for this series of hostings, it was the Central St Martin's University of the Arts, and I was able to use their performance space for these ghost hostings. And the Savage Club asked us all to leave the room while they prepared it. It was very magical. Came back into the room and Rosanna Raymond was sitting there in this amazing costume. And we were invited as guests to activate our ancestors, our ancestry. And a quote from Albert Vend: "Our dead are woven into our souls like the hypnotic music of bone flutes. We can never escape them." And this was a very positive seance. It was a seance which was saying our ancestors are with us all the time to help us, and we should allow them to remain with us. It's a vital, sustaining force. The seance will ask not whose the ancestor is, but what this ancestor can do for the emancipation of all. And I think we were all given some little sweets to eat at the end of it. It was very wonderful. This is another part of the performance. So this is another still image from the performance footage. Now this is from Ghost Hostings 14, also in the Ghost Dance series. During just before Rosanna Raymond's performance, just before this performance, a really wonderful woman called Daniela. Oh, this is all going strange. Okay, there we are, called Daniela Roselson Daniela Diamas, who's actually a priestess of Santeria religion. She came up to me and she said, "I'd love to present at one of your ghost hostings. I'm not going to stay for the next performance. I respect it very much, but I believe that it will really actually activate spirits. And so as part of my own religious practice, this is something I'm comfortable with, so I'm going to leave. But I would love to come back and talk about and demonstrate for you at a future ghost hostings." And so I was really delighted to have her back. With the London Lukumi Choir, and who she directs. So she's a priestess of Oshun, and I really am pronouncing this badly, I'm afraid, everybody. So please don't copy my pronunciation. I'm notorious for that, and I apologise, Daniela. I think Daniela at the ghost hostings was very kindly correcting me throughout. But the possession is that took place could not actually happen. So this is a spirit-based religion. It's animistic, where the spirits of these deities are in, spirits of the sea, and you can find spirits in the woodland, in nature. And some of these gods and spirits can be allowed to enter a person, a dancer and performer. And that has to be taken seriously. So for the ghost hostings, this was a demonstration with not actual possession. So the dancing was demonstrated, the singing was demonstrated. It was absolutely beautiful and wonderful, and was part again of a night of performances. It's a very different kind of seance, but again, it's about activating ancestors, and it's probably very much one that we're all familiar with when we see when we look at films of ghosts, and it's referencing that very much, as well as spiritualism. And spiritualism, which started in America, has its roots in America. And I always say, no coincidence, I think, that it started in America amongst the people that had settled or invaded, however you want to look at it, in America, because there was already a spirit-based religion there, which they'd repressed. And spiritualism sort of harks back to that. It's really interesting that the early spiritualists and mediums quite often have a Native American spirit guide, and I'm always wondering why that might be. So spiritualism starting in America in the 1800s, and then traveling across to Europe, and the spiritualist church really is incredibly, still to this day, very popular in the UK, and is now recognized as an official religion. During just after the First World War, it became very prevalent. There's different theories around that. Some people say that this was because of grief and grieving and trying to come to terms with that mass grief. But people during this time and prior to that time had much stronger beliefs, religious beliefs, and so contacting spirits of the dead, when you have when you're a part of a belief system, equally, is something that was more likely to happen and more prevalent. And Birgitta Hosea here is performing medium, and she's speaking about, in her work, these spirit mediums who were quite often women who weren't able to work, and there's women, they weren't able to vote, but as a spirit medium they could have everyone looking at them and they could say, oh, Abraham Lincoln, I'm just channeling him, and he says you need to end slavery. And again, this is an anecdotal account that I'm relating to, that this actually happened in a seance, that somebody spoke to Abraham Lincoln and said, I'm channeling, and they spoke and said they were channeling a ghost of a president that was saying, we need to abolish slavery. So, and by being a vessel, there's also a problem with that, which we can look more at next week. On Wednesday, sorry, not next week, on Wednesday. By being a vessel, women were seen as being a weak vessel. That's why they have historically, and still largely on the whole, if you look at ghost entertainment, ghost films, ghost stories, largely, but not always, and it's changing, women are the ones giving birth to ghosts. They're the vessel, they contain the ghosts. Think of The Others and other films where they have mediums. They're usually women. They're usually kind of producing ectoplasm or talking to the ghosts, and the men are measuring the ghosts and doing the research into the ghosts. Ghostbusters. That's why one of the reasons I think that maybe when they had the all-female Ghostbusters, it wasn't so popular. It broke that kind of mold of and went against that thing that a lot of people are comfortable with. And it is a problem in ghost popular culture that these sort of stereotypes, gender stereotypes, are able to continue without question. So have a think about some of the ghost films that you've watched. Some of those characteristics are there in those films and in those plays and literature and short stories. And Birgitta is referencing that on two levels. She's talking about how this was a powerful thing for women. They could use this platform to be centre stage, to scare people, to get people to listen to them, to be powerful, to have a religious role, because it's a role where they can be a spokesperson for belief, which is also looking at how in films and in the projected image, this idea of the immaterial ghost, that is a translucent presence, And she's looking at that kind of ghost in popular culture, coming through the whole history of the magic lantern slide up to the moving image, and including in computer games to date. There's a sort of certain kind of aesthetic for a ghost that prevails. And more on that on Wednesday. This was part of one of the ghost exhibitions I think it was in Ghost 4. So this is just a few slides showing you examples of ghost exhibitions before I conclude. So I'll go a little bit more quickly because I think we need to have time for some questions. This is from a recent ghost exhibition that took place at Thameside Studios, and I wanted to kind of bring you more up to kind of more current areas of exploration for me with ghosts, which I wanted to move away totally from the projected image of the ghost, and I wanted to look at ghosts embodying the object. And this is from an exhibition called The Ghost Tide at Thameside Studios. These are 3 different artists' work in conjunction at the entrance to the exhibition, which was a huge gallery space, to kind of prime you for the experience you might be about to have in the gallery. And here are some more details of exhibits from the exhibition. And everything in the exhibition, bar a couple of short films and an animation, were objects, and they were all looking at how an object can be seen to embody a spirit. On the left, we have Charlotte Squire's work, which is referencing seance tables and mediumship around in the domestic space. And on the right-hand side, we've got Heidi. I'm having one of those memory days. We've got Heidi. Sorry, Heidi. I'll put all of these up in the chat for you. So Heidi's work, which was looking at, because it was a ghost tide, it was looking at ghosts as a tide, as being able to travel with people across borders, across boundaries, without having to go through passport control. The ghosts can get through anything, and they bring with them that culture, their cultural baggage with them, and it permeates and moves across other cultures. So it's this idea of a tide. The gallery was next to the Thames. And so Heidi's work was very beautiful, prayer flags, and on the prayer flags were the soles of shoes that have been washed up from the Thames, some of which from people who have been drowned in the Thames, but also people who have been drowned trying to cross to seek asylum in another country. And that was the flyer for the Ghost Tide. And that's the little blurb I just told you about the Ghost Project. And as I said, this is all available for you to watch again, I think. And you can read back through this in more detail and also have a look at the Ghost website, which has a lot more of the archive on it. So how has this fed into my own work? Now, do I have time? I have 5 minutes to briefly talk about how this has gone into my own work as an artist. Hello? Hey, is anyone, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm just checking in because I knew I was going to go up over time there, Naum, so I can just finish very briefly.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how strict you are about time and everything, so I'm going to go back to the slideshow. I don't want to disrupt your program.
I mean,
I'm a notorious talker.
I mean, because this is just the talk before the activity, right? Before the workshop.
The activity, more on that, the activity next week, and not, I keep saying next week, on Wednesday and on Friday, yes.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay, perfect, brilliant. I'll carry on then. Because once you get me started on ghosts.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, just so we can like assess the situation, please just start typing them. And otherwise, yeah, you can carry on for a bit longer.
So all this research into ghosts, and I've ended up bringing this together in a piece of work called the Ghost Formula. So I looked at how ghosts are researched in, from the all the many books there are, from fiction to non-fiction, and all the different subject areas, from psychology, you know, to amateur ghost hunting, religion, etc., physics. So all of these different areas of ghosts. I created a ghost library where people could research and look into ghosts, and it was all part of the ghost formula at FACT, as part of No Such Thing as Gravity, curated by Rob Lefrenay, which Naum was also part of. And this research area also featured a neuroscience, a homage to neuroscience experiment, very much an artist one, which fabricated a robot that had been produced in a study to look at why people might experience presence when there's nothing there. So with this robot, you would push a lever in front of you, and the lever behind you would poke you in the back, corresponding your movement, but with a little delay. And it gives this feeling that there's someone behind you poking you in the back, even though you think it's you. So this was looking at kind of a ghost effect in our minds, you know, and how that might be something we experience through suggestion and through sensation. So this is the big portal that you saw at the beginning of my presentation, and it's a ghost tunnel. So I was thinking as well, this was part of the whole ghost research area. So there was a library, a robot, there was a whole lot of ghost hunting equipment. There was this big portal in the wall, and you had to go down a little corridor to get to it, like, you know, going into the light. And I created another portal in another part of Liverpool, and I made this narrative which said that they were somehow connected, and you could travel like a wormhole from one to the other. And this was sort of touching on ideas, romantic and poetic ideas of an afterlife, and religious ideas of an afterlife, but also on physics and this idea that maybe there are these multiple universes, and that's what ghosts are, that they're these kind of crossovers between universes. So that's how all of this research into ghosts has really impacted on my own practice as an artist. And it's also it's led me to different parts of the world. So this is me going to visit a maker of ghost houses. And these are for the spirits of the dead to live in Taiwan. After they've died, the house is burnt, and then the ghost can go and live in it after death. I delivered ghost hostings in Taiwan, exploring exchange with ghosts. And I've also collected ghost stories. This is an archive of ghost stories that I collected in Liverpool. So these are vernacular stories. These aren't ones that have been written down. These are personal accounts. So for me, that kind of personal ghost account is so important. I've been in many talks and symposiums in different situations with people on all different levels of belief. And it doesn't matter who they are and how skeptical they are. In the talk, they might be saying, "Oh, ghost, it's all in the mind," but afterwards, it invariably someone comes up to me who's been very skeptical during the presentation and tells me their ghost story. Basically, this happened to me, and I don't really know what it means, and you know, and there's always loss there. It's something that connects us. People die, and this is something we have to deal with, and our own death too. The Ghosts of Senate House is another ghost archive. You can see it's a little more kind of shock horror, this one, and a lot more fun. So this was an earlier archive. And the ghost stories that were collected from this archive could be listened to through the keyholes of this magical library. And this was created for Senate House, where the ghost stories were collected. And part of my research again led me to collaborate with this institution. So I approached them, and I ended up doing lots of collaboration with them. I became a research fellow, researching the Harry Price Library of Magical Literature. Check it out, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's got ectoplasm in it. It's got the footprint of a poltergeist mongoose from the Isle of Man in it. It's the most extraordinary archive. And this was my ghost library, where you can't see the ghosts. They're inside the box. It's a bit like a TARDIS, or a confessional booth, or a magician's cabinet, and through the keyhole you can hear the ghost stories. And this is a piece about testing mediums. They were tested by Harry Price, this ghost hunter I mentioned earlier, by seeing if they could light up a light bulb inside a bell jar. So I put the faces of the mediums he tested on the bell jar and light bulbs inside. And one of the nice things for me about all this research is I've ended up writing. So I've written a chapter in a academic paper. I'm not doing a PhD. I'm not an academic. I'm an artist researcher, but I've written an academic paper. So that was an exciting and a challenge for me, and that's been published. And a year later, I was then asked to write for the Encyclopedia of the Paranormal, From Alchemy to Zombies, and I was asked to write the entry on ghosts. That was the coolest thing I did that year. It was fantastic. And I've also been published, as you can see behind the images of the books, in various different art journals. That's a page from Garage Land magazine. Whoops. And in a rather nice way, very recently, my own research comes back to bite me, and other people approach me and say, hey, I'm doing a talk. This was in San Francisco. A museum in San Francisco is doing a talk on ghost houses, found my research online and approached me and said, can I use your images for my talk? And there is Annette giving a talk to the museum. And this is just a little bit of my own work, my own recent work, where my portal came to my gallery. This is New Art Projects. And I created a little ghost parlor, which both looked at ghosts as a domestic entity and a phenomenon as well that's been researched across all kinds of disciplines. These are going to be much bigger on your screen, I guess, than they are in real life. These are the size postcards, they're A6. And this is where my ghost work is going now. Lockdown curtailed things quite a lot, and I found myself a lucky recipient of a COVID grant, Arts Council grant. And I spent my time in lockdown. I was also shielding. I spent my time looking back through my ghost archive and visiting all the stories, both accounts of ghosts from historical ones and also performances and ghost events that I'd organised. And I'm creating 101 ghost stories. I'm doing one a week, generally. I have to say I slipped last week. I'm doing one a week, and there's going to be 101. So that's 2 years of ghost stories, one a week. And you can see those on Instagram, on the Sarah Sparks on Instagram. And that is the end.
Great. Perfect, Sarah. There are some questions. So let's jump straight to those questions. So the first one is Francisco.
Yeah, thank you very much for your lecture presentation. So I was discussing this idea with a friend of mine. We were toying with the idea that modernist architecture killed the British coast. You know, there are no shadows, the corners are not that tight, no hideouts. So would you like to comment on this a little bit?
I don't know. Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's fantastic. I want to hear more about that. I want to be in a conversation with you and your friends about this.
Now, Amir, who is one of our fellow researchers, is telling me about a book by Junichiro Tanizaki, In Praise of Shadows. As he's telling me that he discusses truly this idea.
It's wonderful. I'm not sure if it was the architecture as kind of modernism itself, modernist thoughts, and maybe the ghost disappearing belief. So with decreasing belief systems in the UK, you get less. Actually, ghosts just have evolved. So ghosts maybe are not as clear as they once were, and yeah, they don't have as many shadows and to hide in, and that definitely that idea of ghosts and the dark. There's a wonderful comic poem by Spike Milligan which says, things that go bump in the night tend to give folk a fright. It's the hole in each ear that lets in the fear, that and the absence of light. So, you know, if you're in a dark place and you can hear strange things, then your imagination will put things there. We are programmed to find things in noise. So I don't know how familiar you are with noise theory, and there's information, you know, so hopefully you can all understand me. But if I was, you know, and I became glitched and the screen went strange, you could interpret that in different ways. It's noise. So it's when information breaks down, and if we have, for example, and I'm getting to your point, that if we have, for example, Rorschach ink block test, you see things in there. And if you have white noise, you can hear things within the white noise and see things in them. So our brains are programmed to find things and make things in spaces where we can't see them. So we're constantly looking around, assessing, seeing what's around us and understanding what it is. So if there's something there that we can't compute in our minds, then we try to make something there. So many ghost sightings are, contemporary ghost sightings are those kind of things. And I guess when you have more patterns and you have more shadow and you have more places where you can't see the ghosts, that might be that ghosts appear. But I think that ghosts are still here. I think that we see ghosts in, you know, if you, whether it's, I don't think it's the concrete buildings that which have caused the ghosts to disappear. And if you've seen a film called Pulse, I'm trying to think what its name is. It's a Japanese film from 2002 about how ghosts, it's a really wonderful film, and the ghosts come out of the internet.
Ghost in the Shell, maybe?
No, that's another great film. So the Cairo, it's called Cairo. And it looks at it's in this, the ghosts are a shadow on the wall, and it's very contemporary for its time, 2002 Spaces. There is darkness there though. But you can have darkness, in a modernist space. I think about the Tate Gallery and going into the Turbine Hall and dark spaces artists have created in there. You know, if you create a dark space within modernist architecture and you're unable to see in that space and you hear strange noises in that space, you can program those things there yourself into it. There was an interesting project called the Haunt Project that Professor Chris French at the Centre for Animalistic Research at Goldsmith University carried out, where they created a completely neutral blank space. So there's nothing in it, there's no shadows, it was completely white. And they put infrasound in there into the space without telling participants. They wanted to see if this hidden noise which is said to kind of unsettle people and make people hallucinate, would have an effect. And what they actually found was that people largely did feel uncomfortable in this space, and those that believed in ghosts more had more of an uncomfortable, uncanny experience. However, most people felt something disturbing. This is a neutral space, but they concluded that why they felt disturbed was the suggestion that they might be disturbed in this space. So if you can suggest enough to somebody, if you can create a wonderful ghost narrative in a modernist space, then the ghost will be there.
Right. Thank you.
I hope that answers you. That was very convoluted, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I was just looking for some feedback on this, but thank you.
Yeah, I really want to hear more about that. Sounds brilliant.
Okay, Amir.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for the lecture. My question is kind of a silly question. I just wanted to know what's the difference between the soul and the ghost. So when you are talking about the ghost, what are you talking about? Because we have a single word for both of them. In Persian, they are both called ruh, so they are single.
That is such a good question. So yes, this idea of what is a ghost and what's a spirit, and that there are lots of different names for ghosts. So you have, and those names imply different kinds of spirits. But if we go back to ancient Egyptian belief systems, then there are 5 different immaterial parts of the body. So if we just say ghost and a soul are both immaterial parts of the body, and some people might say that there's just one, and if they could call it a soul if they believe, if they had it, which is generally more equated with a religious practice, the soul. They might call it a ghost if they thought that maybe the human personality survived beyond life, but they didn't necessarily have a religious belief. So they might believe in ghosts, but they might not have a religious belief. But largely in the kind of, that's definitely amongst any country that has a sort of Christian background, there's just the one spiritus. which is was translated, you know, as the Holy Ghost. You get the Spirit. So the Holy Ghost and the Spirit, are they two separate things? If you look at Egyptian beliefs in their burial practice in ancient Egypt, there were 5 different immaterial parts, and only one of them stayed around the grave, like the haunty kind, that would stay around, called the Ka, I think Ka, and it would be in the tomb, and that's the ghost you had to appease. But there were other elements that would go off and have an afterlife and have to learn about navigating the dead, you know, the world of the dead and so on. But there was one that stayed around. So yeah, the difference between them, I think they're all the same thing, but you can have many of them. Sometimes you can have multiple immaterial parts of the human body beyond death. And I had to sort of, when I was thinking about what is a ghost and researching ghosts, I had to sort of really think, right, come on, say, you've got to be really clear. Are we going to say, what is a ghost? Then a ghost is going to be the immaterial part of the human being surviving beyond death, outside of the body.
Exactly. And one last question by Sonia. I'm curious about that one.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this, because this is kind of like what I'm trying to do as well. It's going along, and I really like your wallpaper as well. Is that a wallpaper in your background? It's really cool.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah, I was just wondering, like, just stupid question. I was wondering if you have had any like paranormal encounters yourself.
That's not a stupid question, it's a brilliant question. I'm asked that question a lot, and there's kind of 2 parts to answer, because I get asked a lot, do I believe in ghosts? And I have to have a research project like Ghost, to be neutral and be able to speak equally with people who believe and people who are skeptical. I will remain neutral about ghosts belief. And have I had an experience? I have had things happen to me that I find strange, but I always look for an explanation to them. So I've never had anything where I haven't been able to explain it. When I was doing the exhibition No Such Thing as Gravity, the curator Rob Lefrenet said to me, I'm instructing you, this is my curatorial instruction, you have to see a ghost, Sarah. You need to try really hard to see one, because you haven't seen one yet. So I went out with paranormal investigators in Liverpool. I kind of tried really hard. I went to all these haunted locations, and I still haven't seen what I would be able to happily and confidently say was a ghost.
Have you had any like bodily feelings, or like, you know, chills and things you get apparently when there's like a presence?
I haven't had those. No, I haven't had a feeling of a presence. I have had something called hypnopompia. I think that's the one when you're waking up. I never remember which it's hypnagogia or hypnopompia. I get sleep paralysis. So I've experienced that, and that's and I've had somebody leaning over me. I woke up, it's clear as day, the room is the room. It's not a strange one, it's not a dreamlike one. And that something was leaning over me. It was a woman, and she was kind of eyes closed, and she seemed to be sucking out something from me. And I woke up thinking, oh my God, somebody's got into my bedroom. And I went, yeah, like that. And I flung my arm out, and she disappeared into the air. And my heart was going 100 miles an hour. And that is the most disturbing thing that ever happened to me. And I still say it was hypnagogia or hypnopompia. I haven't had the feeling of us. I've had grief hallucinations. Those are very powerful. So I've lost people very close to me who I love very much, and that is a very powerful thing, seeing them. I found though eventually that seeing them everywhere, they were becoming more my memory of them and less them, and it felt like I had to let them go. And that's a classic thing with a grief hallucination, but still I was aware it was hallucination. I wanted it to be real though. So that's my experiences. How about you?
No, I've had sleep paralysis as well, and what you described is exactly what happened to me as well. I don't know, is this like a cultural thing that you feel like something's on top of you? Because like there are descriptions of very similar like instances like everywhere. So yeah. But other than that, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always leaning over you or leaning on top of you with sleep paralysis. And and really horrible feeling. But interesting.
Yeah, I know a trick. Apparently, you should move your toes and that will let you out of it sooner.
I have to make a noise. So when I've had this before, I wake up going, because but in my paralysis, in my sleep state, I think I'm screaming. But I wake up and I can hear. So it's the strangest thing. The noise is a material thing outside of my head. So it pulls me through from, and somebody was saying unconsciousness. So Freud and psychoanalysis, they started to think the ghost is in the mind. There was another psychologist, he's Radivay, who also kind of went right out there and started saying he could record ghosts. EVP comes from him, electronic voice phenomena. And but Radivay said, okay, so you can't find a ghost, you say it's in the unconscious mind. Find me the unconscious mind. Show me it. Where is it? What does it look like?
Did you encounter any hungry ghost stories like in Taiwan?
Yes.
Is it quite popular? Ah, cool.
Yeah, I love the hungry ghost story, and I love that the hungry ghost story is a historic thing. It kind of started in Hindu. You have the Prata, which is ancient Hindu ghost, malevolent ghosts. It's done horrible things in life, and its punishment is to be hungry, and so it will do nasty things, make you ill, and you feed it. And that traveled through Buddhism. It sort of entered Buddhist culture, and then sort of as it traveled, it became this hungry ghost with festivals, and the Taiwan Ghost Festival. Sadly, we weren't there for it, but I'd love to.
Sorry, just a question. Is hungry ghost kind of related to ancestral ghosts as well, or are they different?
I think they're very different.
Chinese culture.
I think they're both. I think they're both. I think some hungry ghosts are just malevolent, bad spirits. So they're not your ancestors. They're just bad spirits. This is certainly what the medium I spoke to, Pepe in Taiwan, said. Some of them are just bad spirits, and some of them are ancestors. And they those are you respect, and you're feeding them is a lovely thing, because it's like you're sharing with them. You're not appeasing them. So yeah, there seems to be this division. There's the malevolent ghost, who is the ghost that could be the ghost of someone who's done bad things and is suffering as a punishment. But there's also the ancestor that needs to be acknowledged, like the Savage Seance people were saying, Rosanna Raymond, in their performance. Activate your ancestors.
Great.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so I also want to thank you, Sarah, for sharing your wisdom today. And yeah, I guess we should finish now. So yeah, thank you so much. And I really can't wait to see what will happen later this week. Ooh. Fantastic.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, see you very soon again.
Thank
Have
you.
a lovely rest of the day, wherever you are.
And you.
Ciao.